Hi folks, so this video is all going to be about hats and it's going to be fairly short. I just wanted to explain though, I'm planning on doing a through hike later this year, a longer one, and I'm just sort of going through all of my equipment and sort of deciding whether to make any changes or stick with what I've got. So this is part of that process, and a couple of things I'm going to be talking about in the coming weeks. I've got some new layers, so I've got a new merino base layer which I'm going to use for hiking in warmer conditions. I've got, well, a few different mid layers that I'm looking at taking. So this is a Patagonia R1, which I've been using for quite a while. I've got a Kauai Peloton, which I'm also looking at, and a MacPack Nitro, I think it's called, mid layer. So I'm looking at all of these. I'm going to do a bit of an introduction to them in a few weeks and decide which ones I'm actually going to take for the longer hike. And the other thing I've got here is an Alight & Equipment quilt, which might talk a little bit about as well in a future video. But I currently use a Z-Packs quilt. This is actually a synthetic quilt, so I'm kind of deciding whether to take the synthetic or the down quilt. But that's all to come. What I wanted to do today was just to talk a little bit about hats. So again, I'm going through all my equipment and trying to make a bit of a decision about what to take and what not to take. Up until now, for most of the hiking, I've kind of alternated between two different hats. So we've got the adapter cap. I don't know if these are made or designed in Australia. I don't seem to see a lot of people overseas using them, but there are similar sorts of things around. Okay, so they give you heaps of coverage. If I'm going out in the water, this is my logical choice. I wouldn't take anything out else because the sun comes up from all different angles. And I originally bought one of these about 20 odd years ago for working out on the reef. So I was out on reef flats and basically the sun was coming at me from all directions. So I really needed maximum coverage. So I've used that a bit for day hikes and things like that, and some longer hikes, but predominantly for my longer hikes I've been using a Tilley hat. And I really like the look of these and the fact that you can secure them to your head really well like that, and I've got a buff that I wear with it for a bit of sun protection around here, but I'm just sort of thinking I'm probably going to change and start using the adapter cap, particularly for the longer hikes, and I'll explain why. So one of the good things about the Tilley and why I've used it for a lot of hiking over the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, is that I like the fact that it's got good coverage around the brim, so when the sun's directly above you or at a bit of an angle, gives you a bit of protection there. But also you've got ventilation, so when you're wearing this, you can get a bit of a breeze all the way around. So if you're a bit hot and sweaty, you get a bit of cooling around here. As I said, I tend to wear a buff, okay, to protect my neck a bit, and that can be pulled up and tucked under the hat for more complete protection. One of the other things with the Tilley, and it's a bit hard to see on a video, but I've kind of made it into a little bit of a survival kit. So the gear isn't in it at the moment, but it's got a little bit of a whistle here, which is also a fire steel and striker. So that's something I bought from a company called Wazoo in the US. And this is paracord. Okay, so I've got quite a length of paracord here, which is a useful thing to have. At the moment, it's just to hold the hat on my head, but it's got, if you open it up, it's actually got fishing line on the inside and tinder, and of course it can be used for cordage. So that's just basic things that I've attached to the hat. The other thing I used to do, well, have been doing up until very recently, is I put a survival kit inside the crown of the hat. So it has a really nice pocket in here, which actually holds quite a lot. So I've got, I won't go through the contents of the survival kit, but I've got things like a survival blanket, a little torch, I've got tinder and strikers and compass and some money. And I tend to put my credit card in here as well. So there's just basic survival items. So I think about the three key things: exposure, water, and signalling, or being able to make contact. So that's how I decide the basic items in the first aid kit. But that goes so that goes in the crown. It kind of makes it stick up a little bit, which is a bit annoying. I do tend to hit my head a little bit sometimes because I don't judge properly where the top of the hat is. But it is quite handy to have everything like your survival kit and all that in one item. The reason I'm thinking of going over to using the adapter cap, however, for the longer hikes, now this one's had an awful lot of use. This is about my third or fourth one of these hats. It's had a lot of use. Obviously I take it out on boats for diving and things like that, and for work, and it gets, you know, quite a bit of it's had a hard life, let's put it that way, but it still holds up really well. So they're quite durable, as are the Tillies. One of the things I like about them is that they fold up really small. Okay, the Tilly will as well, but this one's kind of tends to retain its shape a little bit more, and it's a single item, whereas when I take the Tilly, I need the Tilly plus the buff. And another thing is that it has a lot of coverage. So as a single item, even against the Tilly with a buff, you've got heaps of coverage here. And with that coverage comes a reasonable amount of airflow as well. Not as much as with a Tilly, where you've got the air can go all the way around. But if you wear it like that, just with everything at the back, okay, that's pretty good for when you're under a canopy and there isn't much sun around. But, and you can even actually just put this up a bit so you've got a little bit more. So there's a bit of a bungee up the top here that holds everything up. So again, it works more like a normal cap. But when you're out in the really exposed stuff, and I'm thinking like long beach walks, up in alpine areas, particularly when you've got low sun angles, so the sun's coming, you know, almost straight at you, that's where this really shines. So you can see this comes up right up here, and you can cinch it up even further and just have your sunglasses, and you've got pretty much 100% coverage. And it comes down a long way, but you've still got ventilation. So if it's a hot day and you're walking in the sun on a beach or something like that, you've got a lot more protection. And the other thing that I've noticed in the last little while, where I've been sort of doing a bit of a comparison, doing a bit of beach walking and comparing them, is that this cap, or this brim, is much more rigid than the Tilly. So even in a slight breeze, the Tilly tends to blow up, okay, and get out of the way. So you lose that protection because it's being blown by the wind. If you're walking into the wind, the sun's just hitting you straight in the face. So, and that's the same on the sides as well. You get the same thing happening. So this is much more wind resistant, so it will hold its shape much better in the wind. So even though I'm losing the capacity to have the hat as a survival kit, I still think the adapter cap is going to be a better option for a longer hike. A lot more flexibility and a lot more sun protection for exposed parts, road walking, beach walking, and so forth.